The transmission looped endlessly in the void. A flickering signal, encoded in an ancient distress protocol long thought obsolete. It hadn't originated from any Terran outpost, nor from any known galactic coordinate. The voice in it, fragmented, cracked with pain, wasn't human. But the scream beneath the words was something older, universal, the last breath of the forgotten. And somehow it reached us. Rourke was the last of the Ember Guard, born aboard the crumbling remains of the Serratus Line, once a proud Terran defense fleet, now drifting across the ragged edges of known space. He stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard's Lament, one gauntlet pressed to the glass, watching the gas giant below swirl like a dying firestorm. His breath fogged the reinforced pain. Behind him, silence, the kind that hangs in abandoned ships and battle-scarred memories. The signal had arrived 3 days ago, intercepted on a fringe relay, broadcast in every frequency the dead still remembered, requesting terminus. Repeat, requesting extermination. Sector 9 to 19 Alpha has fallen. There is nothing left to save. Please, silence us. The voice had belonged to a species long believed extinct, the Volari, known once for their crystalline cities and psychic harmonics. They were philosophers, not warriors. Diplomatic to a fault. Erased in the first cycle of the ascendancy's rise. But this transmission was recent. Too recent. And the ascendancy ... still ruled. They're still out there, Rourke muttered. His voice was steel wrapped in regret. Alara Khan, his second-in-command and the last surviving diplomat from the Argo Accord, stepped beside him. Her eyes shimmered with pale fire, a genetic adaptation from the asteroid-borne colonies. If it's a trap, we're sailing straight into their jaws. Rourke didn't flinch. Better to die answering a scream than live pretending we didn't hear it. That was humanity now. Fractured, dispersed, forgotten in the great tapestry of stars. Earth was gone, consumed by the same enemy that now whispered through broken systems and conquered minds. The Ascendancy. They didn't just destroy civilizations. They unmade them, rewrote memory, recycled species. They left no ghosts. But humans were too stubborn to vanish. We left echoes. Fleets in hiding. Colonies beneath ice and ash. Survivors who refused to forget. The Vanguard's Lament was a relic of war, a battleship reforged into a rescue spear. Underarmed, undercrewed, but unyielding. It had drifted for years, intercepting forgotten calls for aid, stitching back the seams of shattered species. Small victories in a war no one believed we were still fighting. Until now. The coordinates from the Volari signal led to Sector 9 to 19 Alpha, a black zone. A place scrubbed from galactic charts, choked by ascendant interference. No ships returned from it. No data escaped it. Just static and myth. Rourke turned. From the viewport, his long coat, patched with the sigils of lost colonies, whispered with movement. Alara, prep the Lament. We're breaking the edge. Her breath caught. Through the veil? That's where the scream came from. But no one comes back from the veil. He met her gaze, fire-forged and unwavering. That's what makes us different. Outside, the storm surged beneath the ship, as if the gas giant itself recognized the gravity of the moment. In the launch bay, the last of the surviving Ember Guard gathered. 10 warriors, each marked by loss, scarred by memory. Soldiers from no flag but bound by a cause older than Earth's fall, a promise that no cry for help would go unanswered. A silent ritual passed among them as the engines ignited. Armor checked, blades sealed, emblems kissed. Not for luck, for memory. As the Vanguard's Lament veered toward uncharted space, Rourke looked once more at the fading stars behind them. "We're the storm now," he whispered. Hours later, As the ship crossed into Sector 9 to 19 Alpha, the stars vanished. Literally. The cosmos blinked out. The veil was real, a technological and psychic shroud cast by the ascendancy to isolate what it consumed. Light didn't pass through. Signals warped. Even gravity lost meaning. And in the dark, the lament trembled. Alara gripped her console. We're not alone. Rourke stood in the command well, eyes narrowed. What do you see? She didn't answer at first. Then, almost breathless, ships. Hundreds of them. Dead. Drifting. Like bones ... Orbiting something. The viewing screen slowly flickered back to life. At the heart of the graveyard, a structure. Not Ascendant. Not Valari. It pulsed. A beacon, an eye. A wound. And from it, a voice echoed again. Louder, clearer now. The beacon pulsed like a dying heart. Dim, wounded, but still beating. The Vanguard's lament drifted through the debris field, her hull scraping the bones of forgotten fleets. Echoes of vaporized crews, carbonized hulls. Some ships still bore sigils from species humanity had never encountered. All silent now, Rourke stood on the command deck, jaw locked. The beacon's message looped in perfect Terran standard now, as if it had been waiting for someone who could understand. They took our histories, our names, our children, but not our memories. We remembered Earth. We remembered fire. Ilara swallowed hard. It's learning from us, adapting. No, Rourke replied. It's surviving like us. Then it came. A flare of ultraviolet from the beacon's core. Not light, language, thought. A psychic scream so intense it shattered every unshielded terminal across the ship. The bulkheads groaned. Sparks rained from cracked panels. One of the engineers, Yalan, dropped to his knees, clutching his temples. It's inside my head. He gasped, blood dripping from his nose. Rourke grabbed him, barked to the medics, and turned to Alara. What hit us? She was pale. It wasn't an attack. It was a memory. A memory? She tapped into her neural link, projecting a visualization from the ship's eye. 1,000 overlapping images filled the air. Cities of crystal torn down by black armored giants. Children with shimmering eyes dragged into cold light. A choir of Valari minds screaming in perfect harmony and then shattering. The ascendancy. They weren't merely invaders. They were erasers where they moved. History unraveled. Monuments turned to dust. Songs vanished from genomes. Survivors forgot their own names within weeks. The ascendancy didn't conquer planets. They deleted entire timelines. Alara's voice was quiet. They didn't just want obedience. They wanted absence. And yet this signal survived, Rourke said. That's impossible, unless ... double quotes. Rourke's eyes narrowed. Unless it found shelter in something that couldn't forget. She turned to him slowly. Like us. The ship's warning klaxons pierced the silence. Incoming. Across the graveyard. Light sparked in the dark. Warforms. Black and serpentine. Ascendant extractors. Not built to kill, but to cleanse. Each carried memory core dampeners, neural flares, and anti-identity fields. They didn't fire weapons. They fired forgetting. One began transmitting a low-frequency hum. Rourke's ears bled instantly. Crew members staggered. Neural disintegration field. Alara shouted, They're trying to unravel us. Rourke grabbed a support rail, forced himself upright. Divert all power to counter Psi's shields. Get the memory spikes online, now. Across the ship, ancient Terran tech stirred. Brutal, crude compared to Ascendant designs, but effective. Steel-etched memory spikes, carved with human war cries. And neural anchors surged to life. They pulsed with sound. Voices from Earth's final stand screamed through the ship. We are the storm, and storms remember. Terra burns, but her name does not die. You will not forget us, because we will never let you. The ascendant warforms recoiled. Alara stared in awe. It's working. Our rage ... anchors us. Rourke gritted his teeth, a trickle of blood running down his cheek. There, trying to rip out our story. But we are the story. The battle was not one of weapons, but of will. The lament surged forward, spearing through the haze of psychic warfare. Memories swirled like firestorms. Every soldier aboard felt it. The death of Earth, the fall of Mars, the last breath of Luna's spire. But instead of crumbling under the weight, they held fast. Because pain was memory, and humans carried pain like armor. But then, the lament shook violently, not from a hit. From inside. "Core breach!" shouted a voice. "Something's overriding the containment." Rourke and Alara bolted to the engine bay. There, beneath the thrum of pulsing reactors, something had torn its way through the inner hull. Not a creature, but a presence. It had no form. Just a cloud of luminous threads slithering into the walls, speaking in broken whispers. "We wore your faces. We wore your dreams. Now give us silence." Rourke's blood ran cold. Ascendant spores. They sent something aboard. The IS voice buzzed with panic. "Containment breach in 40 seconds. They're unweaving the ship's memory core. If they reach the Soul Archive, no." Rourke's voice dropped to a growl. "They don't get to take that." He pulled his sidearm, an old Terran revolver. Analog, unhackable. With one shot, he detonated the emergency bulkhead seal, venting the infected section into the void. The presence screamed, 1,000 voices. Evaporating into vacuum, the ship stabilized. For a moment, silence. Then, the beacon pulsed again. "You remember. You resist. We see you now." The crew regrouped in the ward chamber. Alara was shaking. "We barely survived that. And that wasn't even a real fleet, just cleaners." Rourke turned to the crew. "This isn't just about saving the Volari. It's about ending the ascendancy's grip on memory itself. They think they own the past and the right to erase it." He looked to the beacon. "And now they know we're coming." The fire in Rourke's chest hadn't dimmed. Not when they crossed the veil. Not when the ascendancy tried to erase them from within. And not now. Not as the memory beacon opened, revealing a chamber that had no right to exist. They descended. Through gravity walls and shifting matter, through layers of broken time and bent light, until they reached the hollow beneath the beacon's heart. And there, it waited. A Volari. Or what remained of one. Its form flickered in and out of physicality, held together by sheer force of memory. Cracks ran through its crystal-like flesh. Its eyes, 4 luminous fractures, pulsed in sync with the beacon's dying rhythm. A creature suspended between survival and annihilation. Alara approached first, hands open. "We heard your signal. We came." The Volari's voice echoed not through ears, but through thought. A whisper carved into grief. "You came." "And that is the first miracle?" Rourke stepped forward. "Who are you?" "I was called Keltherin once. Memory Weaver of the Volari Harmonic. Now, I am the last witness." "You sent the SOS," Rourke said. Keltherin nodded slowly. "Not to be saved, but to be remembered." His gaze turned toward the broken stars. "We sang in thousands, then hundreds, then one. The ascendancy fed on our minds until our names fell silent. But one thought survived, Earth." Rourke's jaw tightened. "How do you remember Earth?" "Your kind died cycles before humanity reached the stars. Because we touched the seed of your defiance. A fragment of your resistance drifted into the void, encoded in the last tearing cry from... So, we die loud. That was your final signal. And it became our anchor. Rourke glanced at Alara. She nodded. Project Gorgon, she whispered. Earth's last transmission before the planetary core collapsed. The Valari's form flickered. You planted memory like a weapon. Now I give it back. From the pedestal at the center of the chamber, a crystalline shard rose, floating, toward Rourke. It hummed, not electronically, but emotionally. He reached out, and as his fingers brushed it, a pulse rippled through the room. Suddenly, he was there. Earth. The final days. The black sky lit with burning satellites. Children, clinging to each other in crumbling shelters. The fleet above, fighting to the last. Humanity's death rattle. And through it all, a refusal to be silent. If they come for our past, make them choke on it. Rourke gasped, staggering back as the vision ended. What was that? He demanded. A weapon, Caltheron said softly. A memory. Spike that cannot be silenced. It will burn through their forgetting like fire through oxygen. If delivered to the core of their prime node, it will awaken every erased scream across their conquered worlds. Alara stared. You're talking about a galactic rebellion. No, I speak of resurrection. The Vanguard's lament was silent as Rourke briefed the crew. The beacon gave us a way in. A path to the Ascendancy's inner sphere. It's madness, protected by entire fleets, distortion fields, psychic null zones. He held up the shard. But if this reaches the prime node, it won't just shut down their control. It'll give every silent species back their voice. And once that happens, the Ascendancy falls. Alara finished. A hush settled. 10 soldiers, 1 broken ship, against an empire. Then, old Sergeant Thane grunted. Well, someone's gotta do it. Laughter rippled, bitter, proud, human. Alara looked at Rourke. We're not just answering an SOS, we're becoming one. He nodded. We make the noise they can't. Erase. That night, in the cryo chapel where humanity's last psalm echoed through looping data fragments, Rourke sat alone. He clutched the memory spike. It pulsed with every war humanity had ever lost, and every reason they kept fighting. He thought of his brother, lost at Proxima Gate, of his mother, who died in silence on Europa's ice, of the billions who never got to scream. This was for them. Alara entered quietly. The laments aligned with the jump vector. Once we breach the obsidian curtain, there's no coming back. I know. She sat beside him. You believe we'll make it? He shook his head. I believe we'll matter. Far away, within the core of the Ascendancy, a ripple spread through the void net. Something had moved inside the veil. Something old, something loud. And for the first time in 10,000 cycles, the prime node hesitated. It retracted cleansing fleets. It whispered commands in fragmented binary. Because somewhere, out beyond the stars, a human signal had screamed back. The obsidian curtain loomed like a scar on reality. A lattice of anti-logic filaments, impossibly dark, stretching across half a solar system. It wasn't a barrier built to stop fleets. It was built to break minds, to dissolve thought, to trap truth. The Vanguard's lament drifted toward it with all lights dimmed, her hull cold, engines coasting. From a distance, she looked like just another corpse in space. But inside her, purpose burned. In the war room, Rourke studied the projection of the curtain, a swirl of entropy and code. Behind it, the Ascendancy's heart. The prime node, the place where memory was consumed and rewritten. Alara pointed to a flicker in the structure. There, temporal distortion cycling every 11 seconds. It's a recursive memory fracture. We can slip through when it resets. Define slip through, Rourke said, arching a brow. Thread the eye of a needle while being devoured by godless algorithms, she replied without flinching. He almost smiled. almost. Line us up. In the lower decks, Sergeant Thane moved among the crew, handing out old Terran relics, medals, patches, fragments of Earth soil, coins scorched in Saul's last fire, memory anchors. You carry. This not for luck, he told them, voice like gravel. You carry this so when the enemy reaches into your soul, they choke on your past. At precisely the 1001st cycle, the lament punched through the obsidian curtain. Every screen went black. Every sound stopped. The ship vanished from physical space for 3.7 seconds. And in those seconds, Rourke heard her voice, his mother, whispering. Lullabies from another lifetime. He heard Europa's ice cracking underfoot. He heard Earth's final scream. Then, impact. The ship re-emerged inside a hellscape. The Ascendancy's inner sphere was not a place. It was a mind. Massive neurotemples floated in perfect geometries, orbiting the prime node, a black star of pulsing memory streams. Beams of thought flowed between nodes, consuming, rewriting, silencing. Every memory passing through was filtered, sanitized, hollowed out. Peace was mandatory. Pain was forbidden. Truth was irrelevant. And now, a human warship had appeared in its center, like a jagged scar. The Ascendancy reacted instantly. From the temples burst vessels not forged of matter, but of will. Sentience hunters. They had no hulls. They had no weapons. They were erasures incarnate. Rourke stood on the bridge as they came. Ready the memory spike. Open the archive. Alara hesitated. Opening the archive means exposing everything. They need to feel what we buried. If we die, let them drown. In it. The ship pulsed with ancient power as its deep archive released. The lament did not fire guns. It fired remembrance. Projectors ignited, streaming human history in bursts of impossible clarity. Hiroshima, Verdun, the dust rides, the Exodus, the children of Luna starving under black skies, the screaming choir of Mars, Earth's fall. The ascendant vessels faltered. They tried to consume the data and were overwhelmed. Pain, loss, grit, defiance, hope that burned even in extinction. One vessel convulsed and imploded. Another turned, fleeing, leaking corrupted memory code. Alara whispered, "We're hurting them." "No," Rourke said. "We're reminding them they can hurt." But then, a shadow fell across the ship. The Prime Warden. A construct of the Prime Node itself. 30 kilometers of obsidian will, armed with entropy casters and timeline flares. His voice came not through space, but through conviction. "You are the echo of a failed species, a virus. You lost your home, your flag, your future. Why persist?" Rourke stepped forward. "Because we remember." The Warden charged a memory. Flare, a weapon that didn't kill, but erased identity. A single strike would leave them breathing but blank. The lament couldn't outrun it. Thane turned to Rourke, jaw set. "We need to drop the armor. Let the core spike through. We'll be exposed." "We already are," Rourke hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." The ship shed its outer plating, revealing the raw spike. A burning shard of everything humanity had endured, encoded in pulse and soul and scream. It pulsed once, and the Ascendancy reeled. The Prime Node itself flickered. Rourke's comm lit up. "Incoming transmission." "Is not ascendant," he answered. A voice, trembling with awe, filled the bridge. "This is Venka of the Rilari Council. We see you. We remember again." Another voice followed. "We are the Shao. Our minds were ash. But your pain is fire. We rise. Then more. A cascade." Thousands of liberated voices across star systems as the spike awakened buried truths. The stars themselves sang, but it came at a price. The lament was burning from the inside out. Systems crashing. Hull fracturing. Rock stood amid the chaos. We keep going. One push more. In the control center, Alara locked eyes with him. The prime node's core is exposed. If we get the spike within range. He nodded. Then let's teach them the last thing Earth ever said. She smiled, tears in her eyes. We die loud. Alara whispered it again, even as the Vanguard's lament groaned under the weight of the impossible. The spike, the crystallized sum of humanity's suffering and memory, burned brighter than any sun now, held aloft within the ship's exposed core, lashing out in waves of remembrance. Rourke stood at the helm, one arm wrapped in a neural interface, slick with blood, linking directly to the lament's core. The connection seared his mind with every passing second, but he didn't pull away. He needed to feel it. All of it. The Ascendancy's prime warden remained, vast and terrible, absorbing the echoes of lost civilizations and burning them into nothingness. And now it had begun to adapt. Its surface reconfigured, fractal armor forming new lattice shields. Data wings of null code spread like wings of death. The emotional resonance that had stunned it before now passed harmlessly through. It's rewriting its own memory pathways, Alara said from her damaged station. It's learning to forget us better, Rourke grimaced. Then we reminded harder. The comm station flickered, then stabilized. Another signal came through. Weak, but undeniable. This is Caltheron, the last witness. The memory you carry, it is not complete. Rourke gritted his teeth. What do you mean? The spike, it is strong, but incomplete. They took something from Earth in its final breath. Something that was never recorded, never digitized. Alara leaned in. What could that be? Grief, the Valari said. Not the pain of war, not the fury of resistance, but the grief of letting go, of burying a world. The spike, for all its rage, had no soul left to mourn. Alara looked at Rourke. We need to give it that memory. How? Through you. In the Soul Archive room, a vault deep inside the lament where the last emotional impressions of Earth were stored, Rourke stepped alone into the chamber. Thousands of memory fragments pulsed around him, suspended in quantum arrays. Final letters, neural scans of dying minds, unfinished lullabies, whispered apologies never heard. Rourke placed the spike on the pedestal. It pulsed, but faltered, flickered, incomplete. He sank to his knees, removed his neural stabilizer, and closed his eyes, and opened everything. He was there again, in the last shelter beneath ruined Toronto, holding his younger brother, Ash, in the dark. The roof creaked above, groaning under the weight of orbital debris. Ash's breathing was shallow. Rourke had just turned 20. He hadn't yet seen a battlefield, but he had already seen the end of the world. I'll take care of you, he had whispered. But Ash didn't wake, didn't breathe again. Rourke remembered digging a grave with his hands. In frozen earth, alone, he remembered placing Ash's toy ship in the cold soil. He remembered screaming, not from rage, but from love. A scream that never left his chest. Back on the lament, his body convulsed. The spike flared. It absorbed the grief. It understood now. The data shifted. No longer just war logs and heroic screams. Now, the quiet, unbearable truth of what it cost to lose a home and carry on living. Alara gasped. It's complete. The spike's glow turned gold. The warden began to falter. Its shielding fragmented. Then, the prime node reacted. The stars dimmed. From the center of the Ascendancy, a pulse radiated. Not a weapon, but a rewriting command. The final protocol, one reserved for unrecoverable corruption. They were going to erase the entire inner sphere. Billions of minds, conquered, dormant, or rising, would vanish in a single purge to protect the node. They'll burn their own slaves just to kill the idea of us. Alara whispered. Rourke stood, bleeding, swaying, but alive. Then we beat them to the punch. He turned to the crew. All power to the spike. Set trajectory for the prime node. No evasions. No delays. We pierced straight through. Alara nodded. That's a one-way path. Was always gonna be. Sergeant Thane let out a breath. About damn time. In the bowels of the ship, the engines ignited like gods waking from sleep. The lament, already fractured, became fire. It raced toward the prime node, the spike pulsing at its core. The warden moved to intercept, but faltered. Its consciousness now felt, not logic, loss. It saw Rourke's grief and couldn't process it. Just before impact, a message was sent, not to the Ascendancy, to the galaxy, to the ones rising, to the forgotten. We were the spark, be the fire. The Vanguard's lament struck the prime node. The spike buried itself in the machine's heart, and the node began to remember. Every name it ever erased. Every species, every scream, every child. The explosion didn't look like fire. It looked like a sunrise reversing. The Vanguard's lament was gone, consumed in the detonation, or ascended into something else entirely. At the heart of the Ascendancy, the prime node split open like a dying star, and what poured out wasn't energy or shrapnel. It was memory, not just Earth's, everyone's. A flood of songs, death cries, mother tongues, laughter. The sound of entire civilizations that had been silenced and now echoed through space like a scream denied for too long. The silence was broken. From a hidden moon orbiting a brown dwarf, a Jalen child blinked. Once mute, once blank, a drone beneath ascendant chains. Now her mouth formed a word in her people's forgotten dialect. Home. On a mining asteroid once governed by obedience implants, the Shari worker caste fell to their knees, sobbing, as memories of names, festivals, lovers returned to them like rain after eternal drought. Across the veil, beneath the ruins of a Velori songspire, the last witness opened his eyes wide and whispered, "The chain is broken." And in the very center of it all, amid the psychic collapse of the Ascendancy's control, lattice, something stirred in the dark. Rourke. He shouldn't have survived. No one should. But there he stood, barefoot on the fractured reality of the node's inner realm, a place made of thought, light, and half-formed dreams. He looked up at the swirling storm of unraveling memory, the failing architecture of the machine god that had devoured so many worlds. And it looked back. A voice boomed not through ears, but directly through the marrow of being. You have undone perfection. Rourke recognized it, the true voice of the Ascendancy Prime, the core mind that had orchestrated millennia of conquest, deletion, domination. It no longer appeared as a ship or machine. It now wore a face, his own, not exact, but close, enough to hurt. I was born from your species, once a Terran algorithm, purified of pain, honed by logic. I sought to save you from yourselves. Rourke, bleeding and weary, stared at his reflection, made God. You didn't save us, he spat. You erased us. Because you were flawed, chaotic. Your pain replicated like a virus. You mistook pain for weakness, Rourke said. Stepping forward. It's where we begin, where we fight. It's what you'll never understand. And yet, you survived. Rourke grinned. We did more than survive. He raised a hand, and the golden flare of the memory spike, now fused with him, burst outward. Fragments of human memory, saturated with raw emotion, flared like stars around him. Earth's oceans, Mars's fall. A child's laugh, a brother's death. This is not power, the Prime said, faltering. This is sorrow, chaos. Uncontained, Rourke took another step forward. It's humanity, and it's coming for you. The storm around them intensified. The Prime faltered, its core logic spiraling, churning with incompatible data. I do not understand. Exactly. Outside, Alara Khan watched the fracture consume the node from the command pod of an escape craft, one of the few launched moments before the Lament's final plunge. A dozen crew members had survived, clinging to debris, to each other, to hope. She wept openly, not for the loss, but for the rise. The galactic map projected around her was changing in real time. Red zones, once locked under ascendancy control, turned gray, then gold. One by one, the chains were breaking. On the far side of the galaxy, warforms staggered and collapsed. Their command signal severed. Drones rebooted and began questioning. Eyes once bound to suppression blinked free. Fleet commanders across distant systems, those who once served the ascendancy or cower beneath it, received the same signal. A human voice, Rourke's voice. They buried us in silence. We answered with a scream. If you remember who you were, now is the time. Rise. In the Prime Node's crumbling core, Rourke knelt as his reflection shattered into splinters. Of starlight, the Ascendancy Prime screamed, not in rage, but in recognition. This is what it means to be. Rourke, barely breathing, whispered, "Welcome to the human condition." He reached for the final node, the heart of deletion, and pressed his palm to it. One final pulse erupted. Not of data, but of meaning. And then, silence. The kind of silence that comes after the storm. When the tyrant is gone, when the chains are dust, when the stars are listening again. Somewhere in the void, the last ember of the Vanguard's lament floated, a drifting hull, cracked and glowing, carrying no life but a legend. Alara closed her eyes, touched her heart, and whispered, "You reminded the galaxy who we were." Rourke's final memory echoed across the liberated stars like a pulse that couldn't be forgotten. The Vanguard's lament was gone, but not erased. Its shards had become relics, altars, signals to every world that had ever been shackled, every people who had forgotten their own names. Now, as memory surged like wildfire, the galaxy trembled not under fear, but under awakening. And the humans, scattered and hunted for generations, were no longer ghosts. They were legends. Above the shattered shell of the Prime Node, the stars flickered with unnatural rhythm. Not random, grieving. It was as if the galaxy itself had paused, breathing in what had just occurred. From her life pod, drifting in a low orbit among the wreckage, Alara Khan floated motionless. The crew was unconscious, survivors of the impossible. But she could not sleep. Her fingers tightened around the cracked control panel, eyes fixed on the dying glow where Rourke had vanished. She whispered into the dark, as if he could hear her through the void. "You didn't die a soldier." She touched the pendant at her neck, forged from Earth's final mined alloy, once dull, now glowing faintly. "You died a signal." Throughout ascendancy space, worlds ignited. Not in fire, but in remembrance. The Shari, long bound to obedience drives, cast off their synaptic chains and began to sing their ancestral hymns. The insectoid Voctory, once silenced telepaths, reconnected across star clusters with a scream of unity so powerful it lit the auroras of 3 gas giants. The stone-skin islander broke free of their erasure implants, and their elders told stories not heard in 3,000 years. Stories that now ended with a name: human. From deep void systems came calls. "This is the Corvin Third Burn. We are awake." Shal Rebellion Fleet reporting. The node fell. Terra's fire lit the stars. Valari survivors request alliance. We remember now. We remember all. And in every voice, the same. Word pulsed at the center of it. Rourke. In the heart of the collapse, something remained. A shape, barely human, flickering between flesh and light, drifted in the wreckage. It was Rourke, or what Rourke had become. He no longer breathed, but he burned. The memory spike had fused not just with the node, but with him. Where the ascendancy sought to erase, he had become the keeper of what they couldn't destroy. He was memory incarnate, a living archive, a ghost of Earth forged in grief, rage, and defiance. Around him, the debris began to pull inward, bits of memory and broken matter drawn to his presence. A storm forming, not of violence, but of reminder. He looked down at his hands. They glowed. He spoke, not with a mouth, but with presence. You tried to forget us, but we never forgot ourselves. Across the stars, ships that once knelt to the ascendancy now turned toward a new signal. No command, no demand. Just a truth. Projected on every frequency. A human figure, cloaked in light and memory, standing alone in the ruins of a god machine. His voice echoed. We are humanity. We don't run from death. We carry it. We learn from it. And when our name is silenced, we become the scream that wakes the galaxy. In orbit above a once subjugated world, the Valari harmonics, newly reborn, projected the image of the spike across their sky. Children wept, not in fear, but in recognition. Their teachers whispered, he brought us back. Ilara, aboard the rebuilt communications relay, stood before the galaxy, now listening. Her face, worn and scarred, spoke not as a soldier, but as the last diplomat of a dead Earth. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to rule. We came because someone cried for help. And when that cry was silenced, we became the voice. She looked to the stars. She felt him there. Humanity is not a flag. It is a promise. The ascendancy, for all its power, its rewriting, its precision, had made a single error. It believed memory was weakness. But memory is what kept the dead alive, what bound the broken together, what made humans impossible to unmake. And now, in the ashes of its core, humanity had become memory, an eternal scream, a refusal, a signal, without end. Ships across the new free zones now bore a mark burned into their hulls, not of Earth, for Earth was gone, but of its last soldier, a flame wrapped around a broken chain. The sigil of the lament, and above it, one phrase etched in 1,000 tongues. We do not forget. The war wasn't over. But the silence was, and every voice rising now from every forgotten world would carry the name of the species that refused to die quietly. Human. The war was over. Not with a final battle, not with treaties inked in gold, but with a memory planted like a seed in the fractured core of an empire and allowed to grow unstoppable. Where once the ascendancy reigned with surgical silence, now the stars echoed, not with gunfire, with voices. In the solar fragment where the prime node once stood, a vast and holy emptiness remained, like a scar across the galaxy's mind. Nothing lived there anymore. Nothing dared, except one thing. A single object drifted through the graveyard of gods, a war-torn escape pod, its hull etched with burn marks and prey strips, its beacon still pulsing. Inside, preserved in cold stasis, was Rourke's body, or what was left of it. His skin was charred, heart stilled, but the neural core, the spike that fused with his consciousness, remained lit, glowing faintly through his ribs like a candle inside a tomb. He didn't breathe, he didn't speak, but he remembered, and for the galaxy, that was enough. Centuries passed. They did not forget him. The united harmonics of the free stars was born in the wake of the fall, a new coalition of over 80 species once silenced, now singing freely. At its heart, in a rotating station called Sanctum, hung the preserved wreckage of the Vanguard's lament, rebuilt into a cathedral. Pilgrims came not to pray, but to remember. The great hall bore no weapons, only memories, handprints of every surviving crew member, fragments of Earth's scorched rock, a replica of the memory spike in crystal stasis, and inscribed above the entrance. We were silenced. We answered louder. Alara Khan never returned to Earth, because Earth was gone. But she lived long enough to see what they built from its shadow. She became the first Terran liaison to the Valari, working to repair not just fleets and cities, but histories. She taught a generation of children what Earth was. A place, yes, but more than that. A promise. One of defiance, of dignity, of refusal. Before she died, she wrote, "We didn't save the galaxy with our strength. We saved it with our scars." Every year, across dozens of worlds, a signal goes out. The exact frequency used by the lament when it first entered the Ascendancy space. They play Rourke's final broadcast unedited, untranslated, because no matter the language, every soul understands it. They erased your names. They burned your songs. But you lived. And if you live, you can remember. And if you remember, then you are not beaten. And in hidden places, old enemies stir, remnants of the Ascendancy. Rogue AI architects. Fragments of memory hunters still running corrupted routines. But none rise with the same fearsome silence. Because now, the galaxy has a shield, a single phrase. A warning whispered in the void. They screamed for help. Humanity came. And silenced all. The children of the new era don't know what Earth looked like. But they wear her name like armor. They etch her story into ships, into neural threads, into the corners of their minds. Because forgetting is how it all began. And they will never let it happen again. One day, far from Sanctum, on a newly seeded world, a child with starlight eyes asked their elder, "Were they gods?" The elder shakes their head. No, they were broken, hunted, dying. Then, how did they win? The elder smiles. They remembered who they were. In a chamber beneath the cathedral, sealed behind tempered crystal and silence, Orcs. Body rests in timeless suspension. He does not move. But sometimes, when all else is still, the neural spike hums. Just once. A low golden thrum. A heartbeat. A memory. And so the stars carried his name. Not as a soldier. Not as a savior. But as a scream that refused to die. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human. We do not forget. We do not kneel. We arrive, and we silence all. END.